everyone, and welcome to my channel. It's me, Heidi. Now, tonight, or whatever it may be for you, day, morning, night, we'll be discussing gender diverse human rights with two wonderful guests, and you may recognize them from last week. But, however, could you please introduce yourselves and tell a bit about yourselves for the viewers who might not know or remember you from last week? Tanya, could you go first?
Oh, great. Thank you. Hello to the world, wherever you are over the net. Yeah. And exactly, it's a very big pleasure to be again here on this show. Yeah, I'm Tanya von Nooring, and I'm the chair of Transfeminists in Finland, the ex-chair of PGU, and several other things. And I've been quite long um, as a transgender woman, but not in the public only 3 years. So that's funny. But I started in '84 my transition, so I can say that in that way I have been quite long because then I came already out from the closet and then spent a lot of time in the overseas in the nearby places and Helsinki, but then I had to go to closet back for a while. And then when I finally devoted to come out in 2017 in Shanghai, actually, I decided that yes, I will devote my time to activism. Here we are today, and it's a great pleasure to be on board the show again.
Thank you. I'm happy to have you on. Now, Susanna, perhaps then.
Yeah, thanks. I'm Susanna Viljanmaa. I'm a board member and the secretary and the art director of Transfeminines, and I'm also a board member of Trasek ry. I started my transitioning 5 years ago, and I completed it 2 years ago.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now, you both are activists in your own right. Could you start by telling us a bit about how did you come about doing the activism you do now? Uh, Tanya, you have a bit longer history with activism. So, would you mind going first, telling how you came about
Okay.
this
Yeah,
whole activism thing?
yeah, I can go with that. Yeah. Yeah, actually, my activism traces back to early 80s in a way because I went to something which was called PSYG-ry, which was an organization existing before SETA, the national LGBTI nowadays, to their party. There was only homo parties here in Finland in those days at a restaurant and hotel called Old Polly on the Lundborg Street in Helsinki. But the actual activism I started in '92 for human rights. That was when I was appointed to the committee for refugee receiving on Helsinki-Vantaa Airport, and there you saw a quite wide variety of human stories, and you could also see how the police didn't want to treat them in accordingly to the what are the human rights, and we were some people who tried to influence them and even wrote a report for how to receive um, asylum seekers to Finland. But unfortunately, after 3 years, the police said that we are not needed and the thing was abolished, the committee, because it was kind of a steering committee for receiving. So we were not actually on the scene, but we had lots of that. And then later, I had joined political movements before that, and I have been actually political active since 1975 with two different parties, and also in them I was very much working with these questions. I'm myself from a language minority, so it has been like a big struggle for me all the time to also to speak for myself and our rights to use our own language, and that brought then me to the trans activism and scene also when I came more out from the closet and um, went. I was involved with River Club in the very early and immediately when I came out from the closet in 1718, and then also became involved very soon with SETAP and the chair of the Transpolitical Committee of SETAP. And that opened completely the eyes. And then somebody asked me that we have an international organization for the transgender people in Europe and Central Asia, TGEU. And with my long history of being involved in organizations, either as chair or board member, or also in the private business, as I was CEO for an airline in 10 years and then for a bus company 8 years. So they asked me that if I like to candidate for the chair position or co-chair position of that organization, TGU. And I said that, okay, I will go to Berlin. But I remember the night before the election, I was sitting in a coffee shop out somewhere on the street. It was quite warm October. So I was sitting there and wondering what in hell I'm doing here. What on earth I'm doing in Berlin and trying to candidate for a world chairing a world organization. The next day I was then the queen of votes. I got the absolute majority of every vote. And as I voted in for that position, which was quite demanding as the organization itself had been quite in trouble for a long time because there was some not enough of intersectionality and not enough of looking at how different groups of people who are working and also those from the board would interact accordingly so that there would be a balance and also kind of a courtesy in the organization. So actually me and my co-chair who came also from a Finno-Ugrian country, Hungary, Christina Orban, we entered a scene where we found an organization quite split and had to rebuild the trust, international trust, the EU trust, the funders' trust especially, which was quite demanding. And I think we succeeded, and we succeeded also to work on many other aspects. From SETA I was sent in September 19 before I was elected to the International LGBTI conference in the EU Parliament. And in my speech there on the first day, I was speaking for a kind of a roadmap for the transgender legislation rights in Europe. And to my surprise, the foreign minister of Malta, the head of the LGBTI network in the EU Parliament, and German German MP from the Greens, and several other took up the question in their following speeches. And during the day, then, when we interacted in the couloirs and corridors, resulted that by the end of the day, it was taken up for the next day's sessions, which we had, where we spoke more deeply on the LGBTI questions and how to have the real rights for LGBTI people. In what way should the EU Parliament work and the European Commission followingly? And by the end of the following day, it was in the end statement my suggestion that yes, EU shall start to make a roadmap for the minimum requirements of the transgender legislation in the European states, EU states. And I think that was quite good because very seldom a private person can get in 2 days something done inside the European Union. So
yeah, that's really
yeah,
really impressive.
I think that's my best thing. I think all the other are just the TGU huge amount of bureaucracy. Well, no, of course we did a lot of good things there too, and had several interesting things, both to the Central Asian countries, to restore also, of course, we had very much to restore the reliability of the organizations among our many different funders, and I think we did that quite well actually. And because it's an organization which is funded by the European Union, several funds and also several states around the world. So it meant a huge amount of meetings, of course. And it gave also, it was interesting, it opened the eyes to on what level then the next level, not the national but international level works. And I must say that I was a little bit, I had been before in international talks. When I was in 1994 or 1993, I don't remember exactly the year. I was young then. I was the head of the delegation who met the Minister of Malaysia, Transport of Minister of Malaysia for talks between Finland and Malaysia. So it had given me some kind of clue already then on how to proceed in international talks. So it was not so difficult, but I must say that yes, there was a lot of learning, and every day you learn. Still, I learn. Every day I learn. I think that even today, my report to ILGA about the Finnish situation, I wrote today or it was a comment about a report that they have been writing the whole autumn actually with Trasek and SETA. So I was there representing Trasek, but also a little bit Transfeminines was involved there, and with some of our comments. So it was like a finalizing of that, because we have 1,000 words we can present about the Finnish situation about 2020 on the trans rights and the LGBT rights questions. And that's hard when you have also the LGBT and the other LGBT rights there, and not only trans rights. So there's a huge amount of questions, and you have to think what is the prioritizing question. And that's very essential to learn. I think that is something that this activism has learned, is how we should prioritize different things. Well, I have done many mistakes also in my life in many questions, also with the transfeminists, also with other
Don't we all?
Yeah, but I think that we learn all the time, and that's also when you said very well in the start that you are an activist at your own. That is a very important thing to remember. We are activists of our own. We are not employees of the organization, and that is also something that we in Finland, I think, don't understand very much, that an organization should have an employee. Well, we don't have financial resources for any of the trans organizations. We have very few SETA and some of the Rainbow families, some others that have actually. And I'm self-employed by Rainbow Center, the Swedish LGBTI, as their finance coordinator on a very low amount of time per week. But anyway, employed. And there is a strict division between staff and activists. The activists have to be on the line. They have to think the long-term questions. They have to come out with ideas. And then the staff should do that. And unfortunately, I think it's unfortunate. I'm often comparing Trasek and Steny of Ireland. Steny of Ireland has 6 or 7 people and an executive director getting a salary that is completely absurd compared to anything.
As you pointed out, we are activists in our own right. It's not just one big clump, because almost always you hear talking about, when people talk about activists, they talk in plural, always plural. They talk about the organization, but for example, the ILGA and the activists. Perhaps we'll go to Susanna now, and then we'll get back to Tanya in just a moment.
Okay.
So your journey to activism and a bit about it.
It started. I'm not sure where's the exact point in time, but in the 90s or the end of the 90s, I started dating a trans woman, and I just was a little shocked that people back then had to keep it private. They had to be secretive that they are transgender. And after we split up, I ended up meeting other trans people who were open about being trans, and their partners who were also open about that. And I had the problem that I was already known pretty much everywhere, around here, and I felt that it's a threat if I transition, because I can't do it in secrecy. And eventually I figured out that I have to start transitioning anyway. And I found out eventually that the crowd didn't care at all. And I mostly didn't have trouble at work or any other places. And I figured out that it's better if I'm open about being trans, so that I can ease other people who have the same difficulties that I have, and they're younger and they're not as certain and as secure as I am now, and they feel that they might lose everything. So I started talking about it in public and in social media and other places. And I had decided about 2 years ago that I should finally join Trasek, and I had missed all their meetings and had missed the opportunity of the chance to get to join their boards. And then Transfeminism was formed, and they invited me to the board, and I got to hold a speech at the International Day of Women. And there was a march against the violence towards women held by mostly immigrant women, and they invited me over to be the voice of trans women. And many of them were surprised that for the first time in their life, they felt that they are privileged to someone who is a natural born Finn. And they were moved to tears. And after that, I've been invited to the board of Trasek, and I've been invited to television and newspapers talking about transgender issues. And lately I talked about the theater scandal in Finnish National, or the Finnish National Theater that had a play all about my mother. And it had 2 transgender or trans female roles, which were both played by male men. And that was a trouble, and it caused some uproar in the media and social media. And we had to address that trouble because they had a little screw up in the recruitment of the actors. And they didn't handle the media either after that. And I think it was a month ago when the International Day Against the Violence Towards Women was held, and there was Plus Collective that was formed just for that event, and I was invited to the board and held a speech over there. And I also contacted the Veera-hanke, which is an initiative for disabled women and girls. And I'm on their board, and I managed to also get some disabled people or disabled women to hold some speeches over there, because I figured out, or I was told, they told me that disabled women face violence about 5-fold compared to the major population. And they held a touching speech over there. And that's mostly been my past year.
That's quite a bit, both of you. Now, I might or consider myself some sort of an activist. I guess having this channel is in some ways being an activist. I've given speeches about what it's like being a trans feminine or trans woman, and I've given a speech in the girls' house in Turku. It was several years ago, but the event was called "How I Became Me," and I told the girls, and the whole place was packed. They said that was the most popular evening they had all year up until that. That was in late November 2014. So it was nice, and I told them the story of how I became the who I am now. It was quite kind of sweet, and all this kind of stuff I've been doing. I've been speaking to nurse students in my in my old school as per request of my former teacher, and I do small stuff like this as grassroots stuff,
Yeah.
not not all of that kind of big stuff you ladies do.
Well, thank you. Well, actually, I think that everything is needed. Everything is valuable, no matter
Mm.
Everything
what.
counts.
Yeah, it becomes also the grassroots. Actually, the grassroots is very important. Well, I told you about sitting in meetings with some parliaments or in the EU. That's the very highest level. But with the highest level doesn't exist there if there is not a national level and behind the national level, the grassroots level. So actually, uh, we need all each other, and actually we are quite good, well now representing all these three areas, even though I'm leaving the international area. Oh, I don't know because I was this week participating in the ICRC um, networks or the organizations seminars for their part of their human rights and their demands on the rights. So in a way, yeah, it's an interesting, but I think we have all to do, and we have to do it because if we don't do it, we are not. And that I think is the major question. We are not. We don't have a place to be. We have unfortunately still all the time to underline that we are and we are eligible to be what we are, whatever.
Yes, indeed.
And that is a hard question, and that we need. And therefore, we need activism. I would be very happy just to leave everything and just have a nice makeup and go to museums, have a cappuccino or something like that. But I don't know. I wouldn't feel good doing like that now. I think I have still a role to play here. I'm old already. I'm 61 years old. I don't feel that, but okay, and perhaps don't look that either. But okay, I think feel that we have all our roles, and that is something we have to remember, and also that we don't think that oh wow that's doing something great on the international level. I would also say that wow that is doing on the grassroots level that kind of work that is very demanding. Also, it's we have all limited time to do this. We have to get our income from something else.
Mm.
Activism does not generate income in itself to any one of us.
Yes.
Well, I'm happy I have a little income from two other organizations. One is an LGBTI organization, and one is a scientific organization, something else too. But you don't live on that, and that is a question. I think that is also a dilemma for the organization, the activism in itself. We have people coming and going. Some are burning out. I have been looking at some of the Finnish um, NGOs during this year.
Mm.
There have been two or three boards. They have burnt out. They have come and gone. That is quite alarming. That tells also something about this age that everything is hectic. You have to do it for the moment. And we
Yeah, and
also
you.
thinking about, if I can say, about the EU meeting. We had 2 days to produce a huge document for a roadmap for everything inside LGBTI
Yeah.
in Europe, and the trans is just a little part of that. The rest is 80 or 90%. So it's like, why 2 days? I would say 20 years ago it had been 1 week or 2 weeks sitting there in Brussels and
Mm.
discussing those things. So that reflects also then on the grassroots level on everything. And so I think we must be very grateful to everyone who does anything for us, because I think it's much more a problem to get people to do anything. They don't want to become members. They want in an association. They don't want. They just find that somebody is directing, like a dictator, a Facebook group or something like that, and they are just doing what they think they will want to do, and not what the group needs to be done. And that is a major question. So I think we have a quite an interesting situation with activism, but that is of course perhaps another talk. That's a general talk about activism itself, and today we are speaking about transgender activism. But but I think this is noteworthy to mention also here.
Yes, yes, indeed. And I think there are times that not just LGBT plus uh, activists take too much work, and as you said, burnout. Um, but it's oftentimes that these people just love what they do, and they just stay there, and before you know it, they're burnt out. It's unfortunate. Susanna, how much do you see this kind of stuff happening, that activists either unknowing, without really noticing, they're doing too much and then burning out, or is it just that there are too few activists, or is it like a mix of both?
I don't know certainly if it's someone burning out or they having other problems, personal problems that prevent them from focusing full forward to the activism work. But we had some members of our board had who had to give up the work, and some other organizations have also had some members of the board give up in the midterm, and sometimes there have been problems inside the board, people getting angry towards each other. But I can't talk that much about that because I haven't done the organization work inside transgender organizations for so far or so long a time at this moment. But
Right.
we'll see.
Right. Uh, Tanya, before we went on live, you mentioned the report you were involved with that went to ILGA. What could you tell us and the audience, yeah, what this report is all
Yeah,
about, and how many people were involved? Now that we talked about how that there are might be too few.
yeah, that's true. Actually, there is few, and that's of course is a way to work because they want to work very effectively on the questions. So if I'm looking here, I can see that there was originally it was just about 3 or 4 persons. Well, we are kind of nominated to represent Finland in these questions. So that it makes, of course, a difference. But that is also very typical that you do this kind of small work groups, and sometimes, unfortunately, when it's too much because you have your normal life, you have all your activism sitting in several boards. So it's very hard to say. But let's say what it was question about was that, of course, that uh, we explained the LGBTI rights situation in Finland between end of 19 and end of 20, mentioning such bias motive speeches like about Päivi Räsänen and the Christian Democratic Parliament Group, who initiated her hateful statements and the prosecutor publicly initiated a criminal investigation towards her. Uh, about the unfortunate death of a trans woman in summer, which was the first in Finland, about the government's gender equality program, and about family laws, parental laws that has not gone forward, as we know that perhaps the Finnish audience at least know, but also that we are working here for a Dutch model where we can have several parents of several genders to the kid and not just the traditional. So that has been a complete stop. But instead, we got adoptions by same-sex couples this year. Um, then about the COVID-19 impact on the organizations and also about on the health. Then we discussed also about the health issues for LGBT, especially for trans people. And there we noted the Palko. This is the specialist board in the Ministry of Social Affairs and Health, and they're publishing recommendations on which were actually transphobic, and their Trasek had done a very good work actually in doing a detailed analysis with that guidelines, the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. So we can see that there was a long text about that. It was written quite against the WIPA norms, and also we added there that now that there was a problem with transgender women who will be denied implants in the future only, but still trans men can get one of the reasons, for example, and such details. Uh, then about the institutional support and more details and police and law enforcement about chairs and parliamentary ombudsman's training material where we had for the military where there was about homosexuals can be omitted from the military service, for example. So this doesn't belong here, but it shows that we have still a long way actually going to want to become very much a more LGBTI friendly country. So that's about what this kind of report is. And then you have to minimize the amount of words there and minimize the text because you have to fit 44 countries in the report. So that somebody will still read that after.
Excellent. And how much work and time would a report like this take?
Well, that kind of report is actually, it's done, of course, by ILGA, either staff or their consultants. In this case, a consultant, which is actually a TGU person, a TGU consultant. And as there is so much of trans questions right now, which are much more on the scene than traditional LGBT questions. There are family questions and there are moving of trans families and trans couples and LGBTI couples over the borders. That's actually the most. And then, of course, the horrible situation in Poland, Hungary. But they are more on. They are not so much in this kind of report, especially for Finland. And so we are concentrating more on those questions. So, but of course, it takes time. We have been doing this in September and filling in. And I think that the staff of SETA has also prepared a part, and then we are reading through the text and doing corrigendas. It's like an iterative process of 3 months.
Right. Now, Susanna, how much when these reports are written and sent forward to concerning parties, how much of an effect do you see in your activism in the organizations you're involved with? Do these reports affect your work and the situation of people you work with eventually? I mean, when do these reports change anything with regards to your work and the people you work with? You're muted.
Mm-hmm.
Susanna, you're muted.
Yeah, I also participate in writing those reports. So I think that mostly all of the board members of the organization take part in writing those reports. It's usually dependent on who has the most amount of available time to participate that project. And usually it's about 1 or 2 days that we put effort in writing a report, for example, the Palko. So each of us had our share of time to think about what are the problems in the proposition and which sort of things need to be put effort and be mentioned in our report. And then on the final day, we just started writing together a report combining the effort of the multiple members of the board and then giving a proofread of that.
Right. How much many human rights organizations operates on a national level. Of course, there are ILGA and such. Uh, what do you think regarding the international collaboration between the similar groups of activists? Uh, is there such is there a lot of collaboration between the activists from different countries besides ILGA and such? Maybe we'll concentrate on trans organizations like Trans Feminines and Trasek and such.
If I can answer it,
Yes.
unfortunately not. There is very little collaboration between the organizations. And like Susanna said already about the writing report, who has time? That is a very essential question. Who has time to do and also who has the money to do the international collaboration? Because normally, if we are not in COVID times, it means that we have to meet somewhere and travel perhaps somewhere and to get out the best of it. I think that in the trans environment, those seminars arranged on special topics by Transgender Europe, which unfortunately the Finnish organizations have been very bad all to participate in, are a platform for such collaboration because the rooftop organization is paying to the local organization tickets, hotels, accommodation, and also etc. Not the living as well, also part of that, and also a seminar then on some special topic. But there is something, at least in the Nordic countries, going on. At least the organization where I have been working with the Rainbow Sankan has had connections to the Swedish one, and SETA has the RFSL one. But that's of course more an LGBT question. On the trans level, Trasek has unfortunately had very little. Trans Feminines has happened to Åland Islands, trans core organization there. So we are looking forward to organize a camp together, a Nordic camp, hopefully for
Yeah,
young
that
people.
would really be quite something.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I think that
what I really I've been involved with um, local SETA SETA chapters, quote unquote, the local associations in Tampere area. Um, th- but that idea of SETA not having only national but also international collaboration would be amazing. Uh, you know, like a band having a training camp between albums. It would be having some kind of activist camp somewhere in the middle of nowhere in Sweden or something, and then brainstorm there. But to be
yeah,
serious,
yeah, actually that's
to be serious,
yeah,
I think I'm surprised that there isn't more international collaboration, especially in these smaller minorities like say uh, transgender intersex people, for example, doing more. Of course, there are fewer uh, intersex people than there are cis lesbian, but either and that would reduce the resources for doing international collaboration. But I think that would be exactly the reason why, because there are so few of us. That would be the exact reason why uh, we need to do such stuff like that, to have um, maybe more power or to get the at least try to get the same, or at least close to the same of the effect than as, for example, just cis gay or lesbian people. What do you think of this kind of thought train of thought, Susanna?
That's granted. I have been paying attention to intersex issues, and I just participated on a lecture about these intersex issues, and I personally know several transgender people who are also intersex, and I myself may have a slighter form of intersex characteristics, but I haven't been diagnosed medically. But I'm at least interested in the issues, and I've tried to be on the map about the problems and the issues, and listen to other people who have intersex.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yes, being intersex is, I believe, statistically even rarer than being just trans. Well, just trans, but yeah.
I think it's something like 4 per 10,000 kids are born at intersex per year.
Yes,
So very low percentage actually. Yeah.
Yeah, it's ridiculously small number. I heard a figure.
In
Yeah,
numbers, there should be about 1,000 intersex people in Finland.
Yeah.
Indeed. Although I heard some years back, I heard that about 100 intersex babies are born each year in Finland, but my figures can be quite outdated. I heard this figure 6 or 7 years ago, so there might have been an update.
Yeah, but then again, not all people know they're intersex.
Exactly. There are many variants of biological sex anyway.
That's like transgender. Are we 1% of the population, or what are we? That's also an interesting question.
Yes.
Yeah. 50,000
It has been,
already.
but it has been shocking for me to know that some people have had their whole medical history erased permanently until the age of like 12 or something, and there's no way they're gonna get that back, no matter if they want or not.
Yeah, it's yeah, because especially if those medical records are older, that means that those were only on paper. No digital copies exist from, say, 80s. Once it's shredded, it's gone.
Yeah.
It's gone for good, unless someone has another copy under their bed of these papers. But it's I've heard similar stories of these horrible stories of these adults having horrible PTSD from what they were subjected to as a child, and then they want to get when they go to say therapy or something along those lines, then and the therapist wants to see all the old papers, like say all the papers from the time before quote unquote puberty, whether it be naturally occurring puberty or medically induced, but boom, all gone. And that is why it's activism, intersex activism, would would be um, really important to push that these there was some talk recent. I can't remember where I saw this discussion. Oh yeah, it was when the UK court, the High Court, the Supreme Court banned all hormone blocker treatments from trans kids under the age of 16. At the age of 16, there's already permanent damage. What's the point of giving blockers to kids that already have the permanent a lot, if not most of the most of the damage has already been done. So why even bother? Stopping the puberty at the age of 16, and then whoopsie, we're sorry.
That's exactly the situation in Finland right now. The new Palko orders for the transgender treatment says clearly that people under 16 are not allowed to get hormone treatment.
Yeah,
and that was noted actually by ILGA as a very transphobic, and also by ILGA.
Yes.
So we have in Finland, but in Finland, you were speaking about the intersex activism. We have a new organization since last March, ISIO, which is the intersex organization, and I wish they will become a part of the OEII, the Organisation Européenne d'Intersex, which is actually was working together with TTU in the same office in Berlin. And I had the pleasure to learn to know them also. And so I wish that they will be part of that organization.
Yes, just I'm sorry. My girlfriend brought me some Christmas pie.
Yeah, and I'm sorry also that I have to quit now, and then I have my dog.
Yes, it's
behind the door.
That's how it goes sometimes. Yes.
Yeah, we have due to COVID is special.
Yeah. We have special circumstances. So this is force majeure. Yeah. Anyway, I think I'll take a comment here.
Right.
Joe blogs. In the UK, it's impossible to get tested for being intersex. My NHS GP just laughed at me when I asked. How's that even? It's possible. How?
That's strange. In Finland, you can get tested, but it costs about a few €100, depending on what sort of condition you want to get tested.
Oh, yeah. I figured. Yeah, I knew it's possible in Finland, but.
But on the other hand, that you can go not to get our NHS treatment after that for the transgender people. If you are classified as intersex, then it stops. Right.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's not for the binary, good to female and female.
Yeah. But screw the binary anyway. It's so restrictive. Yeah. But hey, those of you who wish to stick to the binary, be my guest. It's fabulous anyway. Either way. This is from Susan Brewer, my lovely guest from a previous video. Lovely smile, Tanya.
Thank you.
And then
I put I can comment her. I put a little bit distressed because I participated the whole week in the international conference on rights for sex workers in Europe Central Organizations seminar meeting. So I thought it was very suitable because they have it's an essential question for the transgender people. 25% of trans women in Europe have been working with as sex workers during their lifetime.
Mm.
Stage year studies, and 40% in some countries like Brazil. So it's very much a question for us. It's very much a question for us. And I think
Yes.
that we are taking actively cooperation on human rights questions with the organization.
Yes. So many trans women, and why not? Of course, there are trans men working as as sex workers,
That's
but it's
yeah.
more common with trans women and feminines. Uh,
And also the sad thing of that on the TDO day this year of 350 murders during the
yes.
year from last 95% were trans women, and of them were 60% were sex workers. Unfortunately, Brazil took the jackpot of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
They always. It was they took the jackpot last year. Brazil. It
so,
was really. I actually did on the transgender day of remembrance. I did a live stream on my channel. I read all the 350 names, their age and country of origin. It was a really tough read. The
Also
youngest were
participated
15.
the TDOR held by Trasec and Dreamwear Club and some other
and transfer.
organizations
Yeah,
and trans feminines, and there were two of us reading the names, and it was really a tough job because there were so many young people. About 15 years were the youngest, I guess,
Yeah,
and it
two
was
15-year-olds. Yes, one 16 and then one 17.
yeah, it was hard to keep the tears back reading the first Finnish name.
yeah.
Yeah, me too. I almost lost it when I read the Finnish name. Um, but that is why we need the activism. That's where we as activists come in, because these 350 names was more than last year. I think last year it was 330 or so.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, 330 or so. So
It's a
that's 20
it's a
more.
yeah, it's a TG publication, so I got it on my desk. So
Yes.
the previous year, not anymore this year. It's
It
been
so
recorded. So,
yeah, and the increasing number of those murdered trans people
yeah.
should be a crude awakening to
Uh,
anyone
and actually,
that we need a change.
yeah, we need a change, and actually, the best way is to have a legal change, and that's
Yes.
why these international organizations also, which represents, for example, sex workers, or Amnesty International, or WHO, or UNH, or UNDP Development Program, are working for safe conditions and for
Mm.
such legislation that would enable to have safe conditions. And I think that already, if we would have that much more wider in the world right now, an amount of these murders could have been avoided.
Yes.
That's unfortunate truth. So it's a
Yes.
question. The other is, of course, that we need a change of attitudes towards us. That is a big change because there is many. For example, I read about report about three trans women murdered in Puerto Rico during this year, and it was clearly attitudes. One was working in a shop, one was visiting from New York, where she lived normally, and the third I don't remember. But anyway, that was attitudes in the local male, cis
Mm.
male uh, uh, inhabitants, and that's a much more harder thing to do. But of course, if we can do something with legislation first, that's very good. But then the legislation has to include also hate articles on hate speech and hate other hate issues towards all the sexual minorities and the gender minorities.
Mm.
That is the only way we can actually work towards a better society. Because if we have it in legislation, then also at least a signal is sent to the population, and that's the way to go.
Yeah, and
But it's a slow way. It's a slow
yeah,
way.
we
Unfortunately.
can change laws. We can change laws, but well, not we, but as a society, we can change laws. But even if we change the laws, but we don't change the attitudes. Nothing's gonna change.
Yeah.
Yeah, but after the homicide in Finland, there were a lot of trans youth, and other people who haven't managed to change their judicial gender, and they were anxious that if they get killed today, they're going to be reported and buried in the wrong gender. And I think that now would be the proper time to update the transgender law in Finland. But unfortunately, at least the youth is going to be let outside the update.
Yeah. And many other too, and unfortunately it seems that the update will take a long time. That's of course where we activism have a role. Actually, our organization sent to the Ministry of Social Welfare and Health already in June a letter. Why are they not proceeding? We have never got an answer from the minister on that question.
And
So,
the thing is that if the attitudes are not change, well, it's a two-edged sword, because even if we got the law changed, we can't change the attitude. But if we don't change the attitude, we can't get the law changed. So it goes both ways. And with activism, I believe we can, all three of us, and those activists out there in the world, can do that in their own way. They can change things. Now, before we continue, I would like to ask the audience to give us questions in the chat for the panel, myself, Susanna, and Tanya, and then as we get those questions, we will address those questions. These questions can be anything from about our activism and such, and how and why and what's to come for the three of us. And towards the end of the stream, I'll be, of course, giving a brief update on what's coming up on this channel. But please give questions about today's topic. Now, I think one of the most important things is that do you agree with my opinion that anyone can be an activist?
Sure, why not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are always ways of doing activism.
There are always ways, and like I said already, everybody has their input, no matter on what level it is. It's always important. But there is also a little but. You have to do it in a way right, because if you don't do anything, or you just do something by that way, then you might miss the point, and it can cause actually then so much more work for the others. So it's very important that when you do something, you have to keep in mind what is the line or the agenda for the team you are working for, and that you present whatever you present or do is such that it is in line with the agenda. So that is, I think, the main thing, because if you are starting something else, then you are an activist in something else.
Yeah, indeed. And because this stream is about activism, especially in particular gender diverse human rights activism, I think that I want to encourage anyone who's interested in doing some sort of an activist, wanting to be a little change, to do something. please do. There are ways. There are always ways of doing something good for this gender diverse human rights activism. Now, I think we will be going in maybe 15 to 20 minutes, perhaps. Uh, and there are, but now I think I would like to remind the audience to give us a few questions. There are a few coming up from Joe Blocks and Susan. Yes, here we are. So, what do you think it'll take to get trans majority voice worth more than the minority that are against rights for trans peeps?
That's a very good question, actually. Yeah. Um, this is quite a complicated and a long to answer because it's such a general level. But if you are speaking about the anti-gender movement, we have unfortunately also learned that they have a huge amount of money. There is a report from, if I don't remember wrong, ILGA World, that the current level of subsidiaries to LGBTI organizations worldwide is about $1 billion, and the anti-gender movement gets $3 billion in the United States and Russia. So we cannot compete, at least on that. We have to compete with facts and be patient. And because all their agenda is made up of actually some kind of sandcastles of ideas on what it's about. And if we are very precise in our answers and determined to speak not in their language, not with our own rhetorics, but with very strict scientific and correct way, I think we have a possibility to express us for the public thus that we are the winner in the discussion. It's not an easy task, but we have to do it. What I was there.
And then Susanna, please.
I think that it depends on if you mean the changes in the law, because that's always a slow change. It takes usually more than one government cycle, because first time there was the Christian Democrats, and at the second time it was the True Finns, or the Basic Finns, I don't remember, the Finns party, that were blocking the change in the transgender law. And this time there are no parties in the government that could be opposing that, apart from the center. But they might have too much other problems they have to be dealing with, so that they might not have the time and the power to do the proper change for the transgender law update. And regarding the general attitude towards transgender people, it's a thing that it's not going to vanish at any point of time, but acceptance in general has grown at a constant rate, I think. And I don't feel that I have had to abandon any community because of being trans. So I've been pretty fortunate in that sense. It's always been just certain individuals who have had trouble with my being trans, but not any groups of people or communities.
Yeah. Indeed, Tanya mentioned that there's that the organizations and the parties advocating for trans rights in, was it Russia and the US, have 1 billion, and then the anti-trans side has 3.
No, the opposite. I mean, the world total for the LGBTI question is $1 billion, And the anti-gender movement is financed mainly by United States and Russia
Oh, okay.
movement there, and they are getting $3 billion currently. And that is of
Yeah.
course, but we can see the results. Hungary and Poland. Hungary has now a new law that states clearly that you cannot change the gender marker on the birth certificate, and Poland has introduced LGBTI-free zones. The president is speaking about traditional values. All this famous crap we can hear from everywhere. And that was what I meant with sandcastles. They are sandcastles because they are not valid in a longer scientific or exact discussion. And that's where we can be.
Exactly. And unfortunately, in this case, in in certain ways, um, money matters because when these when we I, I hate to say our side, but the pro trans movement has less money, has less than the other side there, and because they have more money to pay for all these their ad campaigns and try to change people's minds regarding or trying to at least take it to a certain direction. Money helps with
Yeah,
with that.
that's true.
Unfortunately.
It helps also. And also I can note that for comparing while sitting in an European centralized position to look at different countries, I must note for Finland, as we are all the panelists here today are from Finland, that our financing of the trans movement is very, very low compared to any other Western European country. And we are considered Western Europe by financiers, and that is also reason that we don't get that financing that many other Eastern
Yeah.
European countries get. They have often people working at their offices, the same in the than in the West. But we are on the edge, and our LGBTI movement compared our national LGBT organization, SETA has I think 5 or 6 in the office plus what are working for the Center of Gender Right Gender Knowledge, perhaps 10 people in total in Sweden. RFSL has 70 in their headquarters. So it tells some sort of difference in the money. And of course, that makes big difference.
Yes.
Because if you have a lot of people who can work for good policy for an issue, they are working well, and let's see. If you don't have, if it's only activists that own right, like Traffic Trans Feminist Trans or many other organizations, if you want,
Yeah.
it's our time. We don't get really.
Susanna, do you want a word on this?
I've understood that it's more a problem that the politicians don't understand the problems of transgender people or the issues that are going to be voted for. For example, the transgender law. There are too many politicians or candidates for politicians who don't understand that the transgender law doesn't alter the medical transition at all. It's just a judicial gender marker. And I've talked to several politicians, even pretty woke ones, that have understood that it's about the sexual reassignment surgery, but it's just the law or the judicial gender that's going to change for the youth. So there's a lot of
Yeah,
a lot of politicians should learn more about the issues that they're going to be
People are too ignorant.
yeah, they're going to be deciding.
Well, another question is, of course, then the healthcare for transgender people in Finland. It's good that it's free, but it's monopolized to 2 central hospitals, and that's not exactly according to any kind of EU standards. It should be free for so that several municipal and state uh, hospitals could take care of special care and also the private sector. That is how it's in all other European Union countries, actually, in the Western European countries, where it's available at some at least some way sponsored.
Right. Okay. And then we have another question from Susan. In the US, transgenders are often made fun of, which mortifies me. In your respective countries, is this a common occurrence? Well, we are from just one country, Finland. We're all Finns, but yes, transgender people are made fun of. They are, or we are. Yes, trans people are being made fun of on a daily basis somewhere in this country.
Yeah, it affects all of us in some stage. I have been hearing, "Oh, you're a woman or a man," by a ethnic minorities outside a railway station in Finland. The worst I have been with it's actually Germany. I was taking a flight back home from the teaching office, and the security control officer, I suppose she was a woman, started to say, "I don't know what gender you are. Why should I control you?" I said, "Well, I have breasts. Aren't you also a breast person?" "Yeah, I am female, but I don't know what you are." Well, look. And there came a supervisor until the end and some military police. And it ended with I was screaming to them about our rights. And finally they let me go. And I was crying the whole fight.
Yes, the it's horrible. Uh, and yes, it happens in other countries. Yes. Um, Unfortunately, today ladies, it's 2020, and it still happens. I truly hope that in 10 years it will be a lot different. But I'm not sure whether it's at least in realistic in at least some ways, or is it just wishful thinking.
I
But
think,
I hope for the best.
yeah, like I say, I think it's much on the political changes we are seeing in the world, not only Eastern Europe, United States, too, and many other countries. What is the line? Do we get the democratic liberal wins? Because they impact everyone in some way. And I often said that we trans people are there where the homosexuals were 20 years ago. That's quite exactly the same situation for us right now. So we have a long way to go. We shall not wait that it changes 5 or 10 years. It might take 20 years to get the same situation as they have now, at least in the West. And they don't have good at all in the rest of the world. Otherwise, 220 countries, I think 50 countries still have forbidden, it's still a crime. So also transgenderism is a crime, or to be transgender is a crime. And I was very happy when I read that Qatar Airways aircraft taking off from Doha to Sydney went from in Qatar, where people just change plane and very few comes to that country. The whole company that had found a baby in the terminal, and all the women from the plane were taken to a gynecologist. If there would have been a transgender woman on board, she would have been jailed in that country. So we have our risks, and it will take
Yes.
time, unfortunately.
Yes, indeed. Indeed.
Uh, Regarding the comment, I don't think that in Finland transgender people are that much made fun of in public. Mostly the environments I've been in and the social media circles have been pretty much open for us. And even the media has portrayed us usually well, but not always right things correctly. For example, they understand the process completely wrong. For example, that they reduce the whole transition process into one operation. So there's a lot of misinformation about us. And
Oh
sometimes
yeah.
when transgender people have had some issues like the national theater issue, it was ridiculed by some theater employees that it's uh, like USSR or some communist or totalitarian government that's going to censor free art. But it's not about that because we don't have the power to withdraw any play out of show. We can just give some critique, and that's it.
Yeah, that some actually quite fittingly, uh, all LRS comments. I think I think younger generation are more accepting, quote unquote, surprisingly. Most people who I know that have made fun of or slash or do make fun of transgenders are the quote unquote white meat consuming hetero men, to put it bluntly. Thank you.
Yeah,
That
yeah, that's quite well said, actually.
yes, that is
There is
very
much
well said.
relevant to that comment. Yeah, yeah. But now I must also say that very old people, when I came out from the closet then final 3 years ago, were very open to me and came and gave me hugs. Some neighbors aged 85. So it's not only the youth, but of course the tendencies that the younger are more open and more
Yeah,
understanding
it
towards. Yeah,
tends
yeah,
to be so.
yeah. But also exactly white meat, there could be 20 years, 25-year-olds who are very. um I don't use the word rightly, but very conservative values because it can exist in many movements, but especially, of course, in the right wing movement uh, that don't understand anything and are completely against. I have just this autumn seen several, unfortunately, on the social media.
Yeah,
Yes,
I
indeed.
I think
And
that it's mostly been younger people who have understood the non-binary issues rather much better than the elder population. And in my sight, the elder population has usually addressed the binary transgender issues quite well, but haven't just understood the non-binary thing at all.
Yeah,
And even a lot of them have been really okay with me being in binary transgender people present, or but in the same time simultaneously they have had really much misgendering of non-binary people on purpose. But
yes,
sure,
and some yes, some
yeah,
do unfortunately even for non-binary as well as binary trans people unfortunately even nowadays, as Susanna you said, misgender on purpose. Uh, I actually encountered such event yesterday that a person knowingly on purpose did misgender me, but it's just something unfortunately I'm used to, that it happens every now and then.
yeah,
uh, I when I started my transition some years ago, it's I knew it's gonna happen every now and then, less and less in the future, but still future less and less, but still will happen, either deliberately or unknowingly.
yeah, but try to uh, put the focus on the people who are usually somewhat woke and
Mm.
hang a lot in the LGBT peers, but still they have
Indeed,
trouble with the non-binary people.
it,
And
it's weird.
yeah, and another thing that separates the old population from the youth is that a lot of them support adult people transitioning, but have really much trouble accepting that kids get some treatment or puberty blockers, and they see that we're just doing some bad things to the kids
Yeah,
by accepting by granting them some treatments.
yeah.
indeed.
That's a very big problem actually, and that's a big attitude problem, and it's also amongst the politicians very much, and that I think is the major hinder right now to get an adequate transgender legislation and trans health for legislation. It's not the legislation, but at least rules by the social ministry of social and health affairs.
Yes, indeed. I We have another question. I'll take one question and then we'll start wrapping up. From Susan, enough protest finally convinced many Hollywood casting directors to cast gays in gay roles, etc. Until the few decades until until the past few decades, those few roles were given to straight actors. How about in Finland?
I think Susanna is the best specialist in this involved in this national theatre scandal.
Yeah, I think she. Yeah, I think she is.
Yeah.
I don't know that well many actors who are gay or lesbian, and that's a thing that's not that visible in an actor, because a gay person can pretty much pass for a straight person as well. But transgender is another thing that, because you might clock someone who is gay, clock someone who is trans, and it might be, it might affect the person who is going to pursue the acting career, that they might not consider it worthwhile to even pursue the career, because there are not many role models who are trans actors. But I've heard that there are some trans masculine actors in the theater field in Finland. I know some who are trans female who have had some acting roles, pretty small roles for at least, and some of them have done some theater work as well, but it's mostly, I think, unofficial theater roles. So they have been hobbyist theater roles. And that was an issue at the problem that the National Theatre had, because they have in the legislation that the actors they hire, they have to be professional actors who have graduated from the theater play school. And that's a limitation, that they only have a subset of people they can cast in the roles. And they did the mistake of casting a cis man acting as a trans woman, and they could have done the same that they did in, it was a 2014. There was a Finnish movie that had a trans woman as the main role, and they cast a cis woman at the role. And I think that role was quite well done, and you could assume that it was a transgender woman acting the role, even if it was a cis woman. And they had a transgender actor as a non-main role, but another role.
Okay, and all LRS says, I can't name any Finnish transgender actors. Can you name some?
I don't know if all of them want to be outed that way.
Yeah, I don't think
But-
it's I don't think
at
it's
least-
proper to go and shout out their names.
But at least Kaisla had a double role in the Finnish Office series that was, I think it was cast in the network by Elisa. And she played initially a man's role, but the character transitioned into a woman in the middle of the series. I haven't yet watched it, but I think I should pay attention to that role at some time.
Okay, and we have a comment from Susanna MC. That was not a trans role, actually. I think she's referring to when Susanna, you mentioned the cis female actor.
Yeah.
The role of a trans person.
Yeah, the role was a transgender role, but they cast a cisgender actor. And I think that back then there weren't that many of professional level actors who could who could act the leading role in a movie, because it was 6 years ago already.
And one thing was also that the writer of the cast,
Ah.
the director, thought
that-
that it was a transvestite when it was questioned.
Yeah, that's incorrect. That's baloney.
Yeah.
It is a transgender role, and the theater conversion that Samuel Adamson did back then, when you read the manuscript, they have used both the transvestite and transsexual for the same role, because they haven't completely understood what the terminology means. But the character isn't believable at all as a transvestite, because she has underwent several instances of surgery, gender confirming surgery, and she's a sex worker, and she lives 24/7 as a woman. it's not believable at all as a transvestite, and they had to, in fact, they had to change the role in the Finnish theater play significantly, and still it wasn't that believable as a transvestite role.
Oh, Susanna says, I refer to Toda sobre mi madre play version.
Yeah, that was I was commenting about. Right. Just
Yeah, that's
a while
also.
ago.
I must also say that the terms they used in Spain when Pedro Almodovar came with this film was travesti, but it's a common term for all trans people. There was not in those days. There was neither here. When I came out, I didn't know that I was transgender. I thought I was. I heard that there is transvestite, but I thought, no, I'm not that. I'm trans. I don't think I did. There was no terms, and that's and actually nowadays that they use the word travesti is not a nice word. It's actually you don't say that in Spanish. You say transgénero, transmujer, or transhombre, but not travesti.
Yeah, the thing is that the culture in the transgender or the transvestite communities in the Spanish-speaking countries doesn't convert that directly into the Finnish or the English-speaking communities. So you just can't take one role and just translate the whole act into another language. And travesti, I've understood that it's mostly a slur that has been owned by the community, but it doesn't directly translate to either transvestite or transgender. But I've understood that it's usually that those people are closer to transgender people, but many of them have opted to not have the genital surgery just to get a better chance of being a sex worker, because those clients are after or fetishizing the trans women who haven't had the operation yet.
Yeah, and that was very common actually. Though there's also in France there was huge, let's say, comments of them. Bois de Boulogne in Paris, there were hundreds every night. I remember those from the 1980s. And they were also called travesti en français. It's the same word, but it's something else. That word does not exist anymore as such, and that I also remember. And then if that is translated into a play, it can completely wrong, like in this case. But okay, I think that's quite good explanation. Hopefully, from Susanna especially, and hopefully from me as addition.
Yes, and she is commenting, Tanya, thanks for the terminology.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Yes. Anyway, I think we could be wrapping up now. I think we've covered so much already in this just short in this hour and a half. It doesn't feel like having sat here for an hour and a half with you two. But anyway, do you have any, ladies? Do you have like encouraging words or words for current young activists in the future who might watch this video in the future?
Susanna can start.
Well, keep up the good spirit, believe in yourself and the change.
Yeah. I would also say keep on actually very much. But we have to do, and we will. I'm quite sure in the end, but it takes.
Yes, I think if we do the activism with passion for something we are passionate about, there will be, and join others in the work, I think we'll in the future get, and those young activists in the future will get plenty of things done. I think as for myself, to say something to new activists in the future, young activists around today, who may be listening, I want to quote Gandhi: "Be the change you wish to see in the world." So that's what I've been going with for since I started this little grassroots stuff. Anyway, we'll be going now, and yes, please Oh, I forgot. I promised to mention something about the future of this channel, or well, what's coming up. I'm working on collaboration with a few different people from YouTube, and as for this week, uh, for the for next week, uh, most li- most likely I won't be streaming next week, but most likely the next stream will be on 20 on December 22nd, which is a Tuesday 22nd of December will most likely, I can't promise anything for sure, but I'll aim for December 22nd, a Tuesday. Please like and subscribe, and check the links in the description box down below. And bye.
Bye.
Bye.